I have the unique pleasure of introducing Bill Sweeney. Bill is the NAF President. And Bill comes from a family of 7, and 3 of his siblings, all brothers, have ataxia. And so he definitely knows a little something about ataxia and how it affects families. They are part of the SCA1 family. And his brothers and sisters are all committed to finding treatments and a cure for all types of ataxia, not just SCA1. In 2010, his family started the annual Minnesota Walk and Roll, which had raised over $450,000 to support the work of the National Ataxia Foundation. Bill joined the National Ataxia Foundation Board of Directors in 2009, served as treasurer from 2012 to 2015, and was elected president in 2015. He is a retired commercial banker, a graduate of St. John's University and the University of Montana, and he is also a U.S. Army veteran. Thank you for your service, Bill, and welcome.
Thank you, Dana. Oh, nice. I think I'm mic'd up. Everybody hear me okay? Good. Well, thank you for the nice introduction, Dana. As you think somebody would have the courtesy to be dead after such a nice introduction. Well, this morning, my job is to give you a little bit of an update on NAF, and we'll do that really in 3 parts. We'll focus a little bit on what NAF did in the last year. Then we're going to take a look at a little longer history of NAF with a very special guest, and then a look forward. So, if I can control the screen, NAF in 2017. You know, we were really active in a lot of different ways. And in February, NAF received a 4-star rating from Charity Navigator. Charity Navigator is an organization that rates nonprofit organizations. NAF received that designation for the 4th straight year. Next year, we will be able to say that we have received that for the 5th straight year. We were notified shortly before the conference that we received that designation. What that means is that we're good stewards of the money that is entrusted to us and that we're doing a good job. Also in February, we hired Stephanie Lucas as our communications manager to help improve our ability to communicate with you and the rest of the folks that are involved with ataxia research or ataxia clinicians. In March, we unveiled our new logo, updated our logo, and unveiled that at last year's annual conference. In April, we really expanded on the redesign of our quarterly newsletter, Generations, brought a lot more color into that and hopefully a lot more interest to the folks that read that. In May, and actually it was a little bit before May, but we started a monthly electronic newsletter to keep everybody interested up to date with what's going on in ataxia research and other activities that NAF is involved in. We also started for the first time what we call the 60 for 60 walks. Joel Sutherland, our development director, initiated that, and in about 2 months we raised almost $120,000. Joel will tell you a little later a little bit more about what we're going to do this year with that same event. Most importantly, in May, we held the Katie Campbell Conference for Clinical Trial Readiness. That's an important step for NAF. It's an important step for all of you. we want to be prepared to be in a position to have clinical trials conducted throughout the country when pharmaceutical companies and other folks bring to us or bring to the market potential solutions to the condition that affects all of us and our families. So we want to be prepared for that, and that's one of our primary focuses going forward. A matching gift program was initiated in June and raised over $160,000. In July, we moved. We moved from our headquarters in Plymouth, Minnesota, to what we now call our new world headquarters in St. Louis Park, Minnesota. World might be a little expansive for us, but that's where we're aiming. In August, we launched our new website. We had a website that was 10 plus years old. So we upgraded that, and I think it's been received well. In September, there were 16 walk and rolls conducted throughout the country. We had our best year in raising funds for research and for the other activities conducted by NAF. And in November, we began to re-engineer our financial system. And it's important that the funds that are entrusted to us, that we keep good care of those and appropriate those in the right areas. And what did we do in December? Oh, our annual research drive, and we funded almost $1 million in Ataxia research grants in December and funded $250,000 prior to the month of December. As many of you know, kind of next door, we have 160 plus researchers, clinicians from throughout the world, really, who are meeting to share their ideas and updates on the research they're conducting on our behalf. These are heroic people. The work they do is just amazing, and the energy that they bring to NAF and bring to this conference is it's just so helpful. I know last night at the banquet, one of the head researcher just absolutely became tearful in hearing the stories from some of the families and individuals who are afflicted by ataxia. So their commitment is passionate. And if you have an opportunity to meet those folks throughout the next 2 days, please go up and introduce yourselves. You know, they love to hear what the good that they're doing to help us out. So that's kind of an update on what we did last year. But, you know, NAF has been around for 61 years. And I want to pay special attention this morning to someone who has been involved with NAF and the Ataxia mission for more than 61 years. You know, I found a quote last night that I thought was just really appropriate in talking about Julie Scherer. And it's this, it's from Sir Isaac Newton, who said, you know, we are all like dwarfs sitting on the shoulders of giants. We see many things that are more distant than they did, not because our sight is better or superior to theirs, or because we're taller than they are. It's because they raise us up, and by their great stature, add to ours. I thought of Julie when I read that, and this morning it's my pleasure to read a plaque that we're presenting to Julie in recognition of over 6 decades of dedicated service as a board member of the National Ataxia Foundation. Julie has actually spent more than 6 decades involved in ataxia in research in other areas of ataxia involvement. So please help me welcome Julie Schurer. Thank you, Julie. I'll just hold that.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm one of those infamous Scots from way back. I do not have ataxia. What I have is old age. And all of my problems are due to that, including the one with my voice, so you're going to have to put up with it because I do. I'd like to take you back to the very beginnings of ataxia research in the United States. In 1915, 2 Scott brothers went to the Mayo Clinic and said, "What's wrong with us? There were 9 children in our family. 7 of us have this disease. We don't know what it is, but we know that our mother and our grandfather had it. What is it?" And so the doctors examined them very, very thoroughly. And they said, "What you have is a familial ataxia. Go home, enjoy your life as long as you live, because there is nothing we can do for you. We don't know of anything to cure it. We don't know of anything that will prolong your life in any way." And so that is exactly what they did. But they knew there were problems, because those 7 children already had 39 children in line for the disease. And they knew that some of them were going to get it, but they didn't know how many. Now, I was not there at that time, but that was the beginning of our struggle with ataxia. In the late 1930s, my uncle and 2 of his cousins gave themselves to several neurologists and said, "Do with our bodies what you want, but we want to know, what is it that is affecting us? What hope is there for our family? Because we're only 3 of a whole host of our family that is getting this disease." And so they gave their life. They lived with they lived with these neurologists that is in the same town where they were, and they went through all kinds of experiments. I know that they were some of the first to have spinal fluid taken from their spine, and it was a very, very painful process. I also know that one thing they were required to do was the neurologist said to them, "We're going to grind up calf brains, and we're going to feed that to you so much per day for 3 months to see once if it will help you, because maybe there's something in calf brains that will affect your brain." It didn't work. It didn't work. But that's how much neurologists knew about ataxia back in the 1939s and 40s and early 40s. These men gave their life and found out nothing more than a few papers that were written, a few experiments that proved it didn't work, and they lost their life to the disease of ataxia. Remember, in our family, it hit usually between the ages of 20 and 30, and you lived with it for approximately 10 years. And that's why my cousin Henry wrote the book, 10 Years to Live, because that's how long it took in our family. In 1946, I was a college student, and I went to visit Henry Scott one weekend because it was quite close to the college where I was going. At that home, Dr. John Scott came, and we spent a lot of time talking. That evening, after Henry was through with the chores, we sat around the kitchen table. We sat there from 7 o'clock until 2 o'clock in the morning, And Dr. John said, I am going to start the National Ataxia Foundation. And you know, I thought, national? My goodness, we don't even have it in the county yet. But he was going to start this foundation that would look into the cause and cure of ataxia. He was so certain. But he said, before I can do this, I have 5 years I have to spend as a physician in the Army, because the Army had paid for a lot of his education. And so everything was put on hold. In 1948, I got a call from Dr. John Scott saying, I have a grant from the U.S. Army. They will give me money so that I can produce a film on how to diagnose ataxia. Julie, are you willing to take 2 weeks off and help me? I thought, ooh, I'll see once. So I went to my school board and I said, I have this opportunity to go with my cousin to make this film on ataxia. Will you give me 2 weeks off? And they said, go. Because we had 2 families in our school district that had ataxia, and they knew what it was. And so we went to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where a group of the cousins came. We produced this film in which he showed how to examine these people, what to look for in this strange disease, ataxia. This film eventually, I went to 45 minutes. I went along with him also to north central Minnesota, where we examined some more of the cousins, and he continued this film. And then he went to Michigan and finished it with a bunch of other cousins that really I never had the opportunity to meet. But I went along as his secretary as long as I could, took all the notes that he gave, as well as the notes for the people who produced the film. And it was a wonderful 2 weeks for me. But John had to go back to the Army. He had to be discharged. Then he had to set up his own practice because he was a physician, of course, and he had to make a living. And so my work with ataxia sort of dwindled for a few years. Well, somewhere in the early 50s, John called me and said, Julie, I have mice that have ataxia. And he said, I need money for cages, for feed, and for a person to help me with these experiments. And so I wrote to everybody that had some scut blood in them and said, what can you do to help? Now remember, this is the early 50s, and man, did I get the envelopes with $1, $5, $3, but boy, I sent him a check for $500, and he said, that gets me the cages. And so he went to work with dealing with these mice that had ataxia. But the sad thing is, Dr. John Scott also had ataxia. And he knew his time was limited as to how far he could go with the with the experiments. In 1957, he called me again and said, I've got the National Ataxia Foundation set up. I want you to join us, Julie, will you? And I said, yes. And in September of 1957, I joined the board of the Ataxia Foundation and remained its secretary for the next 22 years, even though some of those years, of course, we were dysfunctional. When we started, there were 2 types of ataxia that we knew of. Scott's ataxia, which eventually became SCA1, and Friedreich's ataxia. That's all we knew about this disease, ataxia. After I got back from that meeting, I said to the people of my community, we've got to do something to help him in these experiments. And so we set up bake sales. I went to community chests. I went to churches. You know, the one thing I can do is talk. And so every chance I got, I spread the news about ataxia. I had some other people who were willing to help me there. Some of our relatives in Colton, South Dakota, and in Sioux Center, Iowa, Orange City, Iowa. said, we'll set up a chapter there too. And so we had the 3 chapters there working together. But you know, after a few years, the NAF became dormant because John could no longer work. And so everything came to a standstill. And all the hope that we had dwindled, because now we knew that of those 39 cousins, 18 of them had ataxia. But what could we do for them? Absolutely nothing. And that's the way it remained until 1971. In 1971, a chiropractor in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, who had 2 patients with ataxia, and these boys said, we also have a niece who has ataxia, this same disease. And he applied to the National Institute of Health, NIH, for help in finding out something about this disease to help these boys. There were articles in the newspaper. There were all kinds of magazine articles printed in time about this strange disease of these kids out in South Dakota. Some of the researchers who were working on neurological diseases became involved and said, hey, we'd like to find out more about this. And so by that time, Dr. Lawrence Scott was through with his medical training, and he said, Julie, you're welcome to get back on board again. We got to do something about this because they want to examine people. So he said, get the cousins ready in southwestern Minnesota. And so we got as many as we could to come together to learn what they could do to help. And we set up those chapters again. We got them going very, very strongly. Thousands and thousands of letters came in because of those articles which D. Wiedemeyer wrote in the Sunday paper. But it wasn't just people who were sympathizing with us. All of a sudden, there was a group out there in Kentucky who said, hey, we've got about the same thing. We'd like to find out more about our disease. There was a group out there in Nebraska that said the same thing. Another group in Iowa, another group in Michigan. It went all over. All through the South, there were groups that said, we have something like this. And Henry Scott said, we have to get NAF back on its feet again. And so he became the president. He worked with it very, very strenuously so that we could start research again into what was causing this disease. So once again, I got the relatives together. We organized bake sales, community chests, talent contests. We spoke in churches. We spoke to Chamber of Commerce's, anybody who would give us a chance to get our foot in the door. We had 2 very, very special projects. One was called Trash for Cash. Now, in those days, it cost 13 cents to send a letter. But if you bought 2 boxes of Wheaties, they would send you $1 back. And I got the people in our church, as well as in a whole number of churches round about us, to save all of their garbage. And they brought it to us, and we would send in those letters in their name. And we raised thousands of dollars with that for over 20 years until the program was discontinued. It was a rebate program that really worked. At least it worked for us. Another one, about that time, somebody invented making insulation out of used old newspapers. And you know, it gets mighty cold in Minnesota, so there was a great demand for insulation. We made thousands of dollars collecting newspapers in all the towns around us and selling them to make insulation for our houses in Minnesota. But it was thousands of dollars that kept the NAF on its feet. Yes, there were rough spots in the 80s, rough spots because the economy went down. There were times when I would get a call from the office saying, we're completely out of money, we can't pay our secretary. Do you have anything? And I would send in what little we had. But always something came through. Somebody sent in enough that we were able to keep it going. NAF struggled. It struggled valiantly, but we made it. In our family, there were 65 people who have died of ataxia. Today, we have one person who has it, one person who can get it. That hasn't been easy because many people have had to forego giving up having a family of their own, because the only way we knew of stopping ataxia was to stop having children. It was a very, very difficult decision to make for many, many people, but it was our only hope. Today, we know where we stand with ataxia. When I think of the very, very first conference that we had, a whole 35 people came. Most of them were relatives, of course. And now I look at this group, and I know that you are only a very small part of the National Ataxia Foundation. You don't know what it does to me to see all of you here, because I know there are some of you here who have the same fire burning in you to stop the progress of this disease as burned within my heart. I'm 90 years old. It's time I retire from this board. It's been a very hard decision for me to make, because I love the National Ataxia Foundation with every ounce of my body. I know there's 2 people who want my place on the board, and I don't know which one I will choose yet to take my place. But I'm going to warn you, I'm going to watch you. I want you to fight this disease with every ounce of your strength, as I have throughout the many, many years. Keep up the fight. Someday, sometime, we're going to have something that will help the people of it with ataxia, the good Lord willing. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
Oh, to wish I was that energetic when I reach 90. Thanks, Julie. When we look out today and see all of the people here, and maybe it was all because we served breakfast for the first time. I'm not sure. But we owe so much to the people that spent really decades building this organization and raising awareness of the condition that affects us all. I see I've got the wrong slide. Here we go. 2018, a quick look forward. 2 things, programs that we're looking forward to this year. The Ataxia Investigators Meeting, which I mentioned earlier, taking place right next door. As I mentioned, the passion of these folks and their willingness to cooperate with each other is just amazing. For any of you who know how things work in academic circles, it's unusual that researchers really help each other. But the folks who are researching ataxia, it's just amazing to see the way they share information and work together. They have a common cause. I'd mentioned clinical research. We just received notice prior to our meeting here that the Macklin Foundation, located in Baltimore, is joining together with NAF to fund the Clinical Research Consortium for the next 3 years to help build clinical trial readiness sites throughout the country. the importance of that just cannot be understated. Research is the basis on which we're going to find a solution to the condition that affects us all. And part of that research relies on the next item on that bullet point, the CORDS registry. You know, research requires, for lack of a better term, subjects. Research requires people to participate in research so that answers can be found. And joining the CORDS registry, and there's information in our program on how you can do that. There's a table outside that anyone can sign up for, whether you have ataxia, any kind of ataxia, or whether you're at risk, or whether you're from a family with ataxia. That provides a basis for those researchers to draw upon so that they can find the answers we're looking for. The next thing we're going to put a lot of emphasis on this year is to recruit support group leaders and engage more people in our support groups. We have support groups throughout the country. It's a great way to connect not only with NAF, but with people in your community who are going through the same kind of challenges you are, whether you're directed or whether you're affected directly by having ataxia, or whether you're a person who supports someone with this condition. The other thing, and really to support these programs, like everything, it all comes down to money, and there's several different fundraising events that we have going this year. I won't go through those. Joel Sutherland, our development director, is here someplace wearing a beautiful orange tie. Joel? Oh, there he is, sneaking up with, there we go. And Joel will provide a little update on some of the things that we have planned to raise the funds we need to support our programs.
I think this tie is just second to the red, white, and blue lei that Bill's wearing, don't you think?
I was told this morning, I was asked if I had been laid.
Hey!
So I went and got this.
There we go. Hey, good morning. That's outstanding. Hey, before I get going, just a couple of shout-outs. You know, I think most of you know that today's session is on Facebook Live, and we have folks from around the country looking in. And just like last year, I want to send a shout-out to a friend and a big donor to the foundation, Mr. Sergio Damasio, who I know is looking in from Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. So, Sergio, thanks for all you're doing. We appreciate it so much. I've got a feeling Mary Fuchs down in Phoenix is watching this as well. We've done some really good things down in the Phoenix market. I'm going to try to get us back on schedule here just a little bit, but Bill alluded to the 60 for 60 campaign that we embarked on last year. We set a goal of $120,000 for that campaign last year, and it came in at $120,024. So whoever sent in the $24, I thank you so much. It keeps Bill Sweeney off my back. So we greatly appreciate that. A couple of years ago, we started the 60 for 60 campaign, primarily walking 1 mile for each year of NAF operations. I guess I was a little premature with that. It was actually 59, but we walked 60. And then last year, it was our 60th anniversary, and a bunch of us walked 60 miles again, raised $120,000. And let me tell you, 60 miles is a long way. It's a long way. And you know what? I can't honestly tell you that it was fun, but it was a fantastic experience. It was fantastic. But with a few years down the line here, we got a little smarter. And what we're doing this year, even though we're going to 61 miles, we're going to go the extra mile. But we're going to do it a little easier. We're going to make it a little more flexible, and we're going to make it logistically light. So hopefully more of you will want to get involved with us. Specifically, as opposed to walking 60 miles, why don't you bring some friends with? Bring 2 friends, that's 3 of you, walk 20 miles. Bring a friend, bring 9 people with you. Get 10 people together, walk 6. Get a group of 61 people together, walk a mile. How about that? Do it whatever time of the year that you'd like to do it. I mean, it's all a matter of bringing folks together, raising some funds, building awareness, and energizing our community. The other real nice piece about this particular program is I call it logistically light. You know, we have some real go-getters in our community, people who put on our walk and roll campaigns each year that there's a lot of work to them. But imagine, with going the extra mile, no permits, no restrooms to get, no catering to get, no signage, no public address systems. You know, it's bringing your friends together through an online letter writing campaign, what have you, to pull this event together. And you know, right now we have John, what do we have? 29 people have registered, okay, for this year's walk. Now, I don't want anybody to get nervous here, but bear with me for a second. As I put that down. Now, all right, here goes the good-looking guy. I don't know if it's really a good-looking shirt at all, but
Music?
yeah, is there any music in the house? Any music? Yeah, where's it? Yeah, there we go. Oh yeah. Don't tell my wife about this. There we go. Now we're talking. A little soft shoe. Julie, you want to dance? All right. This year we are going to go the extra mile, right? And we need people to... There we go. And guess what? I have some more T-shirts here. I think I have about 10 of them in here. Who wants to sign up? Who's going to be number 30? Who will be number 30? Larry, you're already on the list, my man. You're one of my 27. We need one right now. There you go. There's number 30. Now, like I said, we've got 10 here, and we can do this really slow or really fast. But we're gonna move these 10, right? What do you think? Let's move another one. Who else will sign up and be a member? There we go. 31. If I got the wrong size, we'll work to get it for you. Okay, here's number 32, right back in the corner there. Our goal for each of these campaigns, it's a goal, it's not a commitment, but we're trying to raise $5,000 with each one of these. I mean, we have all year to do it. It doesn't have to be done in April or May or June or July. I mean, let's face it, you don't want to be doing this, I don't think, in Phoenix in July, and I know you don't want to be doing it in Minnesota in December, or April, as far as that matter goes, right? All right, do we have one more? We have it. There, we got another one in the back corner. Back over here, Cindy. And another one over there. And we're going to get your names, and we're going to get you hooked up. We're going to get your websites pulled together, your fundraising pages pulled together. We'll talk with Steph, actually, wherever Steph is, about getting a press release out for you in each one of your markets so people can know what we're doing. Remember, our whole effort is to raise funds, build an awareness, and energize our community. The fact is, everybody, money buys research, research finds the answers, and that's how we're going to get to where we want to go. And all of these events that we're setting up here today are going to get us closer to where we all want to get to, right? All right, I think do we have one more? We're done. You guys are awesome. All right. One final thought. I know we have a lot of first-timers in here. I know this is, you don't really plan to be here in Philadelphia here for this conference. I want to let you know there's a lot of people in here that are with you. You are not alone. Let's get after this all together. As to quote Helen Keller, she said, "Alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much." Let's get after it. Have a great conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Okay. Thank you, Joel. Well, 2018 and beyond, we're going a little overtime here. I don't want to impede on anybody else's time. But I did want to say, it's up to you. Accomplishing the things that we need to do to conquer ataxia, it's up to you. And me, and everybody else in this room, to commit to find the answers to that condition which brings us together. And we really are together in a way. This is This is an Ataxia family. I know for those of you who are here for the first time, the best thing about this conference is meeting other people. It's just a joy to see faces that some of us who've been here before, we see again and again. So please use your time wisely. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks again for coming. We appreciate it. And I think we're going to serve breakfast again and again because it really brings out the crowd. Thank you.